And this is not a spider that you want to take a bite from. What are you doing?
America is home to 3 species of potentially dangerous spider, and our aim is to catch them all.
Now, hearing all that, you might think, Zach, isn't there some risk to holding this spider? Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Zachary Gray, and today, I'm off on the ultimate spider hunting adventure. Ever since I was little, I've always had a fascination with creepy crawlies. And in my home state of Louisiana, I've grown up with some of the best. But of all the invertebrates you can come across, none are more feared than spiders. I've decided to start our hunt in the town of Pearl River, Louisiana, where there's been a recent increase in staph infections. Spider bites and bacterial infections are commonly misdiagnosed from one another. And I have a feeling I know which of our 3 spiders could be living in this area, the brown recluse.
Now, it's hard to say if the large amount of cases of staph infection in this area are actually brown recluse bites. Those are 2 very similar things that oftentimes get misdiagnosed for each other, and brown recluses most of the time get blamed for it. Now, my question is, we have an area that has a large amount of staph infection, and we have a large amount of recluses. But one thing's for sure, a nasty bite from a recluse is no good, and there are a lot of recluses out here.
These spiders love to hang around old buildings, so that's where I'll be checking first.
Here we go. Yeah, that's a brown recluse right there. It's a decent sized one too. Go ahead and get this guy. Thank you, little guy. Now, looking at this is 100% the invasive variety of brown recluse. This is the Mediterranean recluse. Now, every single brown recluse that we've featured on the channel has actually been this species of recluse. This is without a doubt the most widespread recluse species in the world. They live on both the Americas, Asia, Africa, Australia, and Europe. So they're a very successful invasive species. Now, the native recluses tend to live in a lot more open habitat. What we're in here is a neighborhood in essentially swamp habitat. Not a place you'd think a brown recluse would be hanging out. They like to hang out in very dry locations. So places where there's a lot of drywall, wood framing, tarps, some of their favorite places to hang out. These spiders are oftentimes nicknamed the fiddleback spider because if you look right on his head there, he's got a little violin shape. Kind of looks like a fiddle. So violin spider, fiddleback spider, and brown recluse are all names for this same spider species. This spider possesses a hemotoxic venom of a decent potency, but not something that I would consider to be life-threatening. However, it doesn't mean the bite from a brown recluse couldn't end up being bad. Brown recluse bites are actually very prone to infection. Now, whether they're more prone to infection than other spider bites or not is heavily debated nowadays. This is actually a very difficult species to study because of their size and their venom yield. And doctors who oftentimes diagnose brown recluse bites oftentimes aren't fully familiar with their effects. So whether something is a staph infection or a very infected brown recluse bite, it's very difficult to diagnose. But of course, we're all familiar with those super gnarly brown recluse bites that you can see online where it rots a hole into you. Now, they don't get very big. I would say they maybe get about twice this size, but that's still a very small spider. So if you see a large brown spider on the ground, it's most likely going to be a wolf spider and not a brown recluse. These are one of the easiest spiders to misidentify because there's so many little brown small spiders that they can be hard to tell. But I've seen enough of them that whenever I see this spider, see those 6 little eyes, lanky legs, and that fiddle on the back, I know it's a brown recluse. It's a good looking spider and our first of 3 medically significant spiders that we're going to be tracking. I'm going to go ahead, get this guy into a container, and we're going to keep on our adventure and hopefully find our next brown venomous spider.
Brown recluses are often misidentified with other small brown spiders, but this spider is 100% a brown recluse. You can see that distinctive violin-shaped marking on the back, a really good identifying feature for this species. But if you still don't believe me, another way to tell the brown recluse from other spiders is to look at their eyes. These spiders only have 3 pairs of eyes, 6 in total. You have to look close, but it's a dead giveaway. That one was easy, but our next spider is one that I don't encounter much in this region, the brown widow, another invasive species. These widow spiders are originally believed to be from South Africa, but no one knows exactly where they came from, or when they first got here.
Now, what we see here is a classic example of why a brown widow would be sitting in a house. You get this window right here, a spot where lots of bugs and lots of small animals are going to get trapped. Nice and shady, out of the weather, really great place for a brown widow to hang out. And then you've got flowers right outside your windows. You know what that means is these widows are going to have a constant influx of food and they have permanent shelter. This is one of the main reasons why brown widows have been so successful as an invasive species.
Brown widows can be found virtually anywhere in the world. Much like the brown recluse, these spiders like to hide in human structures.
Right there is a really nice looking brown widow. Hey buddy. Come here, bud. Ooh, you came out easy. Hello. Have a look at that. That's actually a pretty nice sized brown widow. These guys don't get nearly as big as their cousins, the black widows, and they're a lot harder to identify. They look very similar to a lot of common house spider species, a lot of other comb claw spiders, but if you look, they still do have that red hourglass and that very distinctive widow shape. Brown widows are an incredibly variable species. They can be tan. Some of them I've even seen have been close to white. This one is your more typical brown widow spider with a lot of patterning and those little bands on the legs there. Now it can be hard to identify these spiders. I would say one of the things is they have much longer legs than a lot of the other house spider species. They've got those little bands, and then obviously that orange hourglass. There's lots of other spiders that have that hourglass that aren't widows though. These are an invasive species, and I would consider them to be a pest. Even though they're not as big as the black widows, they take over these urban environments much more successfully than them. Good looking spider. It's exactly what we wanted.
Brown widows aren't as recognizable as black widows, but their egg sacs are very distinct. A small, spiky silk sac, perfectly tucked away in the corner of her nest. They kind of look like an old submarine mine, and are almost always present in a brown widow's web. Since these spiders are so variable, it can be hard to identify them on one trait alone. So the egg sac is a great way to identify a brown widow infestation. Now it's time for our last spider, the black widow. Unlike our previous two spiders, black widows can be readily found in natural environments throughout their range, although you can find them virtually anywhere. There are 3 distinct species of black widow, and down here, you'll find the southern black widow. I've seen a few in this area before, but they've got a lot of competition from other spiders.
Man, I tell you what, it is hot out here, but that is exactly what spiders like. This is peak spider season here in Louisiana. Now, the main ones that I'm seeing under here are cellar spiders and lots of comb-clawed spiders. Now, comb-clawed spiders are in the same family as widow spiders, so they're gonna look very similar to things like brown widows. But their webs aren't as strong, they're not nearly as big, and their legs are a lot thinner. Not exactly a dangerous species.
These wetlands are home to stacks of other wildlife. And while our target spider would seek shelter in this kind of weather, another venomous native is just coming out.
I tell you what, this is exactly why you gotta be careful where you put your hands. That's why I always have a snake hook with me. Whoa. Whoa, he just bit the hook. See him right there? Whoa, he just tucked his head back. Hey, bud. Whoa! He is not happy with me whatsoever. Come on, bud, come out. I know you're getting away from the rain. This is a little cottonmouth. And I tell you what, I don't blame him for getting mad at me here. The rainstorm, he's trying to find some shelter in this bridge. Gotta be careful, these little ones. Little moccasins make me super nervous. Now this is why you've always gotta be careful whenever you're rummaging around for anything. Doesn't have to be looking for wildlife. Anywhere in these little cracks and crevices. Now we're in the middle of some prime cottonmouth habitat. Literally, this place crawls with cottonmouths, especially during the rainstorms when they start moving around. And it's starting to rain heavy, so I'm gonna go ahead and get him back into his crevice. This guy wouldn't have near as potent a venom of the spider that we're looking for, but he does have a lot more of it. So a bite from this guy would be much more dangerous than the spider that we're looking for. Back into your crevice there.
That snake has more venom than any spider we could possibly come across in these swamps. Under this bridge is an animal highway, perfect hunting grounds for the widow.
Here we go. This is a really nice looking black widow. As you can see, these spiders love really shady, dark, secluded areas. Now I tell you what, it is hot and there are a lot of bugs out. All of the spiders along this bridge are coming out in full force to hunt. Now this would be a medium-sized one, not full grown. I've seen them much bigger than this. But one of the reasons she might not be too big, you can see right there. She's got an egg sac in her web. You can see right there, it's that famous red hourglass on the bottom of a solid black spider. Now not all spiders that have hourglasses are widows, but this one certainly is. We're gonna be very careful here. Ooh. Here we go. This right here is the southern black widow. They're not an aggressive species by any means, but they still feel threatened whenever they're disturbed. She's not super big, but she is just active. There's actually 3 species of black widows. You've got the western, the northern, and the southern. Now here in America, besides the black widow species, we have 2 others. Brown widow, which we've already gotten to see, and the red widow, which lives over in Florida. It's a Florida endemic. One of my favorite spiders in the US, actually. But this right here is most certainly the more iconic of the species. Now that she's gone and settled down, I think we're gonna go ahead, get her into a container, and get a closer look at America's deadliest spiders.
Black widows produce latrotoxin, a unique neurotoxic venom that causes fever, vomiting, muscle spasms, and in smaller prey items can lead to death. It's believed that this stronger venom is used to take down small reptiles and mammals.
What we've got here are the 3 most notorious spiders in North America. We have the brown recluse, the brown widow, and then we have the black widow. Overall, it did not take me long to catch these spiders, as they are very easy to find and very prolific throughout their range. So out of these 3 spiders, I think the first good one to talk about would be the brown recluse. Now, recluses aren't closely related to widows, and there's a few different species throughout the world, but they all look very similar. Out west, I've gotten to see the desert recluse. I have gotten to see the native brown recluse in Louisiana. And right here, we're looking at the Mediterranean recluse. So he's attached to his little piece of wood here. Go ahead and get you out. Now, even though these spiders look a lot like wolf spiders and other brown spider species in this area, as you can see, brown recluses are a really shy species, and you can see there, he's just trying to get out of the sunlight, get into the shade, but I do need you out in the open. Woo! They're very fidgety, but they're not aggressive. And most of the time when a bite happens from this species, it's gonna be because they got smushed or pushed into the person's skin in a way that inflicts a bite. So here, my forearms, my armpits, anywhere around my neck, these are really soft spots that are prone to getting bit by a recluse. Oftentimes they'll end up in people's gloves or in people's shoes, and that's how a bite will happen around their ankles or around their wrists. But what I've found is that these spiders really don't like to try to bite people. I've not seen a lot of video footage or a lot of evidence of these spiders being aggressive or defensive, which means your odds of getting bit by a brown recluse, even if they are around, is very slim. Now, the venom of a brown recluse is still heavily debated to this day. We know that these spiders do have an above average venom, but it's not lethal to people normally. Aside from allergic reactions, which can basically happen with any kind of sting or bite, the main reason that recluse bites are so well known is the secondary infection after the bite. Now, I guess the main question is, why do so many secondary infections happen? Is it because of where the spider is living when it bites people? Is it that there's bacteria on their fangs? And these are some really good questions that I do not have the answer to. A lot of these spiders are very understudied, and smaller spiders in particular are actually very difficult to study. So what we know about these spiders and their venom and their bites is based off of very few bites and a good few people in the lab trying to take a closer look at these animals. Medically, a lot of staph infections and a lot of smaller infections do get misdiagnosed as brown recluse bites. So I would say the reputation of this spider is actually worse than its bite. As you guys can see, very placid, doesn't want to go anywhere, but we're gonna go ahead and get this guy in a container and take a look at the brown widow. Now, this is a decent sized brown widow, so I do need to be careful. Brown widow bites are few and far between, which you wouldn't expect from such a widespread widow species. Now, once again, this is very much so a spider to respect and be very careful with. Brown widows still do have latrotoxin, a very specific venom named after widow spiders, and it can cause a wide range of symptoms from spasms, cramps, soreness of the bite site, and even temporary paralysis of some parts of the body. Now, hearing all that, you might think, Zach, isn't there some risk to holding this spider? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that this spider couldn't bite me. In fact, he could randomly take a moment, crawl on top of my knuckle and go, you know what, I'm just gonna bite. Whack, and now I've got a brown widow bite. Could happen virtually any time. You'll notice I'm being very gentle, very still. I'm working with the spider. You can see she's not moving right now. Now, brown widow spiders are invasive throughout the entire world, and they're believed to have originated in South Africa, but we're not 100% sure. Now, they're a very finicky spider. You can see she's got those 2 longer legs in the front, and she's feeling around. She's not sure what's happening. She's just trying to get to some shade. All 3 of these spiders like really shady, dry areas. Brown recluse is more than the other 2. but brown widows definitely thrive in shady, dark environments. Now, as far as the bite of the brown widow goes, it is a lot less toxic than a black widow, and there's a lot lower venom yield. And when you're talking about a spider this small, that is a lot less venom, a lot less potency, which means brown widow bites are normally not going to be serious. Still not a bite you want to take. Allergic reactions can happen. Latrotoxins are a strange mix of proteins that we still know very little about. So once again, it's important to respect this animal. Now, when I say respect this animal, these animals are unpredictable, they are wild animals, and brown widows are an invasive species. They are considered a pest. They will get into houses and cause genuine infestations. So they're a species that pest control gets called out for a lot of times. Oftentimes whenever infestations are found, they are sprayed. And while as an invasive species, they don't actually cause a lot of issues for the environment, they definitely cause a lot of issues for people. She's decided to hang out on my pinky finger. Now she's throwing out a lot of web, and that's the #1 defense of Latrodectus, of widow species. They'll throw out a bunch of web at any potential predator in hopes of tangling them up and bothering them. And yeah, it's getting all up in my face. It's actually really bothersome for any predator, even myself, to deal with all this webbing, because it's all getting all over the place, all over her, all over me. So while these are a very infamous species and they are considered a pest, I would not consider these the top dogs here in North America. That crown would 100% go to the black widow. Its larger cousin is much more venomous, much more likely to give a genuine bite, and is much more likely to have complications after the bite. So I'm gonna go ahead and put her up and we'll take out the black widow. Now it is finally time to take a look at our big old, beautiful, female black widow. Now this is the most infamous spider in the United States, and for good reason. It has the most potent venom of any North American species that we know of. Now this is not a full-grown black widow, but this is an adult, as you can see by that egg sac. Oh, she's throwing a bit of webbing on me. Whoa, look at that! Well, hang on, before I get her on my hand, take a look at that. That liquid silk that she just threw on me, that is their primary defense. Now, a lot of people have argued, oh, black widows have that potent venom to keep away predators. And I just don't think that's the case. They throw web at predators much more often, like she just did. She feels entirely threatened by me. She knows I'm something that can eat her, but she still didn't try to bite me. Her first defense, despite having really potent venom, was to throw web at me. Really interesting. But of course, you know, you never know. I could die right here, and I will still post the video, and you can say I told you so. They're so pretty, let me tell you. I never get tired of seeing black widows. They're so iconic compared to other spider species. Now, these are not my favorite widow species. That would 100% go to the red widow. Now, if you see a black widow of this coloration, it's going to be a female. The males are smaller and actually resemble something similar to a tiny brown widow. And they'll normally be hanging out in the web with the widows. Now, of course, we all know the iconic reasons to why these spiders are named widow spiders, and it's because they eat the male after mating. Now, it doesn't always happen, and there are lots of other spiders that do this, but it's an iconic thing about spiders that is well known because of widows. She's very curious, going around, she's placing web all over me. That's just what these spiders do. They place web everywhere, and they've got a tough web. Now, as stated with the brown widow, these spiders have latrotoxin. It causes muscle spasms, it causes aches, it causes high fever. Black widow is not a spider you wouldn't get bit by, and for sure, if you take a good amount of venom from this spider, you are going to feel rough. You are going to feel sick for probably a few days at least. There's always a chance of a bad reaction, and this is not a spider that you want to take a bite from. I'm not saying you should live with these guys in your house. I'm not saying you should have to put up with them. What I am saying is that black widows are an incredible addition to a natural environment. So if you see these guys out in nature, make sure to go ahead and leave them alone. They're not causing anybody any trouble. They're not out to get you. And some of my favorite species in the country. What are you doing? Goodness, so she did actually just try to bite me. She tried to bite me on my palm just now. Didn't go through the skin. I've got callus here, and she could not get through. And nothing's gonna happen, basically. Isn't that something? This, as well as our brown recluse and brown widow, are America's deadliest spiders. Really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing, and make sure to go check out the time that we found the red widow spider, one of my favorite Florida endemics, and we will see you guys next time. Alright, time to get you back into your container. That was scary.